Now, I want to catch up with a Liberal MP, Tim Wilson, who joins us from Canberra. Good to talk to you, Tim. I'm going to have to start with the Demon scarf, of course. Congratulations. Halfway through the third quarter, you must have been feeling a bit squeamish, but boy, they powered home.
Yeah, the second quarter I was becoming increasingly depressed. The third quarter did not start out as I hoped, but by the end of it, I think my neighbours had never heard someone shout at the television with joy so much. And by the end, when you got to the siren had gone, we'd comfortably won. We'd doubled the score, and then they still kicked another one after the siren had gone. So,
well, you know me, I could talk footy all night, but it was a great story, and I thought the way your leadership, especially Christian Petrarca and Max Gawn, spoke about what it meant to the club and to all those individuals who went before them was really a credit to them and the club. But let's get on to the big issues facing the nation. And when that
was a pretty big one, but yes, I take it.
When we talk about this pandemic management, the way New South Wales is looking to live with the virus, and obviously Victoria is now doing the same thing if a few weeks or a month behind, how do you get the other states to face reality? How can the federal government force Mark McGowan and Stephen Marshall to be fair and Anastasia Palaszczuk to be more realistic?
Well, Reckoning Day, politely, is coming for them. They're going to be ones faced with the choice of either locking their states out, not just from the rest of the world, but the rest of the country, if they keep going on this strategy. All you're doing is buying yourself time against this virus. And that has always been the way. This time last year, when we were talking about the Alpha variant, I kept giving a speech in the Parliament talking about how we need measures that are sustainable to take us on this journey, because we're going to go on the journey. We've only defeated one virus in human history, and it's only been one variant of that virus. So we can help them, obviously, by making sure that people get vaccinated, and they are, and we're meeting great targets on that. And of course, working with them to manage the process, but they can't sort of live under the doona or pull the wool over their eyes, or whatever analogy you want to use, in perpetuity, because it's simply not sustainable.
Can't the federal government open up federal borders? I mean, with vaccinations, we could make vaccination a prerequisite to enter this country. 14 days quarantine seems over the top now, superfluous. If you relax the conditions on which people could come into this country, that would force the states to make a choice whether they let overseas flights in or not.
Well, the Trade Minister's already made it clear that opening the borders in some capacity by Christmas so Australians can return home is absolutely on the agenda and is as late as he would like to see. In New South Wales now, we're trialling 7-day home quarantine, so not 14-day hotel quarantine, 7-day home quarantine. And I'd like to see that, obviously, with vaccinated people decline even further. So that's absolutely something we can do as part of it. But the question for the premiers is, do they want their economy and their communities locked off, not just from the rest of the states, but of course from the rest of the world?
All right, now the big political issue, the long-term policy issue that the Prime Minister's grappling with is net zero. Pressure on him to match the rest of the world and business and the states and say net zero by 2050. Can Australia get to net zero by 2050?
Well, it can with a credible plan. A plan without a target lacks credibility, and a target without a plan lacks credibility. And that's the point the Prime Minister's been making every step of the way, is we need to clearly get there. Now, part of it's going to be on the basis of existing technologies, but what we know in the next 10 to 20 years is we're going to see a rapid advancement in technology, replacement of energy, in power in cars, and what we're going to be doing in agriculture. And you've seen what's been going on at the moment around the government's clear message on positive energy in terms of transitioning agriculture. So I absolutely believe we can get there. And that's kind of what this conversation is really about. It's about recognising there is a future and there is an opportunity out of the challenge our country faces. The question is whether we seize it and how we seize it. And that's where the government's rightly focused. I absolutely believe it can be done.
The point here is I think it's easy to make that promise. Everybody has made that promise. So what do politicians have to lose by making it? The real question for the public is, how do you do it? And I just want to show you a quote from the International Energy Agency, their big report earlier this year on net zero 2050 globally. A lot of media focused on this, but they all missed out this key point, where it says most of the global reductions in CO2 emissions through to 2030 can be done with existing technologies. But in 2050, almost half the reductions come from technologies that are currently in a demonstration or prototype phase. In other words, we do not have the technology yet to get to net zero. So the promise is made on a wing and a prayer.
I don't agree actually with that. I mean, I agree that a lot of the technologies are in the prototype state and are going to make it through to maturity and going to be deployed. And that's going to be critical, not just for getting our emissions down, but of course getting the emissions in other countries, and particularly developing countries who can't manage that cost. But we know not just that this current generation of technologies are in prototype stage, are going to keep going. And there's huge investment that's going into this space. And this is ultimately where Australia and the rest of the world is wanting to lean into this challenge. And it's a question of the extent we want to lean into it, where we see the opportunities from it. And I think they're considerable. Of course, there's a very big focus on our government from hydrogen and the potential it can play, because it's not just something that we can produce locally, which obviously is good for our own energy, it's good for jobs, but also the potential of how we can export it, particularly through parts of Asia. We're already exporting or trial exporting hydrogen to Japan. So there are plenty of opportunities in this space.
Yeah, but there's a lot of technology yet to be developed.
Yeah,
we shall see. Thanks for joining us, Tim. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Tim Wilson there joining us live from Canberra.